When betrayal cuts deep, it doesn't bleed red. It bleeds memories, promises, and the bitter taste of revenge waiting for its hour. I learned that the night my mother's coffin was still warm in the ground, and my sister looked me in the eyes and said, "You were never her real child anyway." From that moment, grief turned into fire, and I swore her cruelty would cost her everything. My name is Elena Walker, and that night changed everything. The sky above the cemetery was a heavy, unrelenting gray, spilling rain in thick sheets that plastered my hair to my forehead and turned the soil beneath my boots into sticky mud. The air was cold and metallic, thick with the scent of wet earth and fresh flowers, lilies, roses, and daisies arranged meticulously in my mother's favorite shades. The coffin gleamed, polished mahogany reflecting the sparse light of the overcast sky, and the sound of the lowering mechanism grinding against the supports echoed like a death knell through the damp air. I should have been thinking about my mother, remembering the softness of her hands, the way she laughed in the kitchen, or how she tucked me in at night with a gentle reminder that I was capable of anything. But I couldn't. All I could focus on was Vanessa, my sister. Tall, flawless, every inch the image of composure, standing with that smug expression that could make anyone believe she had never known shame. Her eyes locked on mine, icy and unwavering. Then she spoke, and the words landed like stones against my chest. "You were never her real child anyway." Time slowed. I couldn't breathe. My heart thudded in my ears so loudly I was certain everyone could hear it. Around me, relatives murmured and shuffled. Some glanced at Vanessa with wide-eyed shock. Others exchanged thin-lipped smiles as though they had long suspected the truth, and my father gripped his umbrella so tightly I could see his knuckles whitening beneath his suit jacket. And there I stood, utterly alone, as if the rain had created a wall around me, isolating me from everyone and everything that had ever mattered. After the burial, I escaped to the quiet of my childhood bedroom, a space that should have offered solace, but now felt suffocating. The wallpaper, once cheerful and full of hand-painted flowers from my mother's imagination, seemed faded and dull. Dust motes swirled in the dim light filtering through rain-streaked windows, and the familiar scent of lavender from her old sachets lingered faintly in the drawers. I sank onto the edge of my bed, hugging my knees, and let the weight of Vanessa's words crash over me repeatedly. They were not just cruel, they were annihilating. My entire identity, everything I had believed about being my mother's child, had been called into question in a single, merciless sentence. I wiped my tears with the sleeve of my sweater and noticed something tucked beneath a stack of old notebooks. An envelope, yellowed and fragile, bore my mother's delicate handwriting. My fingers trembled as I pried it open, and the contents spilled out: letters, journal entries, and notes I had never seen before. My mother's words leapt from the pages, warm and familiar, reminding me of bedtime stories, whispered reassurances, and countless small acts of love that Vanessa had spent years trying to make me doubt. Tears fell freely now, but amid the sorrow, a spark ignited, a fire of clarity, anger, and determination. I spent the rest of the day poring over every letter. My mother had loved me fiercely, defending me silently when Vanessa had sown seeds of doubt, shielding me in ways I hadn't realized at the time. My sister had manipulated memories, twisted conversations, and isolated me from the family she controlled so tightly. Each letter was a reminder of what was stolen from me, of the stolen laughter, the erased joy, the undermined confidence. And with each revelation, the fire inside me grew hotter. Night fell, but sleep was impossible. I found myself pacing the room, tracing patterns in the hardwood floor, whispering promises to the empty walls. "You will pay for what you've done. Every lie, every cruel word, every stolen moment." I imagined confronting Vanessa, not yet with action, but in my mind, rehearsing every word, every gesture. I pictured her expression changing from smug satisfaction to shock, disbelief, and finally, fear. The thought made the blaze inside me burn brighter. This was no longer just grief. This was the beginning of a reckoning. Over the next few days, I moved carefully through the house, now empty and echoing with memories. I observed Vanessa with the precision of someone cataloging prey. She was flawless in public, warm to some, cutting to others, always in control. Or so she believed. I noted who she trusted without question, who flinched when she spoke, and where subtle cracks in her perfect facade appeared. I realized just how much arrogance she carried, a weakness that could be exploited if I was patient. One evening, driven by a mix of grief and curiosity, I climbed to the attic, a place I had avoided since childhood, haunted by shadows and half-forgotten memories. The dusty air clung to my skin, and the single bulb overhead cast long, distorted shadows. Trunks and boxes lined the walls, some overflowing with old photographs, some with keepsakes that had belonged to both my mother and Vanessa. It was here, among the relics of the past, that I found more proof of Vanessa's manipulation. Letters she had intercepted, journal entries she had hidden, even photographs she had altered to make me appear distant from our mother. Every piece of evidence stung, but it also clarified one undeniable truth. Vanessa had underestimated me completely. I spent hours in that attic, sorting, reading, and piecing together the narrative she had tried to overwrite. With each discovery, the fire inside me grew, transforming grief into something actionable. I began to plan quietly, observing, cataloging, and analyzing every opportunity for the day I would confront her. Not recklessly, but with patience and precision. Every lie she had told, every manipulation she had engineered, became a blueprint for strategy. I was no longer just a grieving daughter. I was someone preparing for justice. The nights were the hardest. Sleep teased me, coming in short bursts and interrupted by dreams of confrontation and accusations. I imagined Vanessa in public, finally exposed, her carefully constructed life unraveling around her. I imagined the reactions of those who had once been blind to her cruelty. But these were dreams, ephemeral and fragile. In reality, I had to wait, to plan, and to sharpen my mind as one might sharpen a blade. The fire inside me would not be extinguished, but it required focus. By the end of the first week, I had begun keeping a detailed notebook, a record of observations, behaviors, and vulnerabilities. Small things, seemingly inconsequential, like how she reacted to mentions of our mother, how she treated family friends, and even tiny habits that revealed her arrogance. These notes would be the foundation of everything to come. I knew that patience, careful observation, and strategic timing were the only paths to victory. Sitting alone in my room that night, I allowed myself a long, deep breath, feeling for the first time since the funeral a strange sense of control. Grief still lingered, raw and present, but it no longer paralyzed me. It had become the forge in which my resolve was tempered. I traced my fingers over my mother's letters one last time before placing them carefully in a box, a treasure trove of proof, memory, and motivation. Vanessa had ignited a fire she had never anticipated, and I would harness it. Tomorrow, the real work would begin, the planning, the observation, the careful gathering of allies and information. The fire in my chest was steady now, no longer a fleeting spark, but a blaze that would burn until justice was served. Vanessa had underestimated me, and I would make her regret it, though the reckoning would be mine to deliver, in my own time and on my own terms. The fire that had ignited in me the night of my mother's funeral burned brighter with every passing day. I could no longer let grief alone define me. It had to be transformed into something purposeful, something that would ensure Vanessa felt the consequences of her cruelty. My first step was observation. I had spent years as the silent sister, underestimated and overlooked. Now, that invisibility became my greatest weapon. Every movement Vanessa made, every word she spoke, every interaction she thought I wasn't watching became ammunition. Vanessa had a carefully curated life, filled with people who admired her, feared her, or were too polite to contradict her. Her days were rigid, almost predictable, and I began cataloging them meticulously. I observed her morning routines, noting which friends she contacted first, which calls she ignored, and the subtle cues that revealed her mood. At night, I pored over old photographs and letters, cross-referencing them with recent events. Patterns emerged. Weaknesses appeared where she thought none existed. A misdirected glance here, a flinch there, a moment of doubt hidden behind her perfect smile, all of it became part of a growing map, a blueprint of her life that I intended to unravel. To gather more information, I needed proximity. I found it by volunteering at the charity Vanessa had established after our mother passed. At first, my presence was invisible. I was just another volunteer, quiet, unassuming, diligent. Yet it gave me access to the inner workings of her life, her schedules, her confidants, and the network of people who depended on her for approval. Slowly, I began inserting myself into that world, observing who whispered to whom, who shifted uncomfortably when she entered a room, and who was loyal for reasons I could exploit. The charity, once a symbol of Vanessa's image of perfection, became my training ground for understanding her world. One afternoon, As I organized donation records in the office she used, I noticed a document partially hidden beneath a stack of files. It was a budget report, but subtle discrepancies immediately caught my attention. Vanessa had made errors, or perhaps intentionally hidden information from those around her. I copied every detail carefully, making notes in a small notebook I carried discreetly in my purse. Each piece of information was another thread I could tug at when the time came. My pulse quickened with the thrill of discovery, but I kept my face calm, neutral. No one suspected the storm brewing in my mind. It wasn't just the documents or schedules that fascinated me. Vanessa's behavior revealed much more than numbers ever could. I observed her interactions with the staff and volunteers, the micro expressions, the slight tensions, the flashes of arrogance that made her blind to the quiet resentment simmering around her. She believed herself untouchable, flawless, and that arrogance was her greatest vulnerability. I cataloged every reaction, storing them in my memory alongside the facts I gathered, knowing that when the time came, I could exploit them perfectly. I also found an unexpected ally. One of the senior volunteers, Mrs. Caldwell, had known our mother for decades. She had witnessed Vanessa's manipulations and her attempts to rewrite history. She approached me one afternoon, leaning close as we sorted donation boxes. Her voice was low, cautious, yet urgent. "I know what she's done, Elena. I've seen it for years. I can help you." My heart leapt. I had been so careful, so meticulous, and now I had someone on the inside who understood the truth. Together, we began piecing together the hidden elements of Vanessa's network: financial secrets, social connections, and personal vulnerabilities. Mrs. Caldwell's knowledge was invaluable, and her support reinforced my resolve. Still, in the quiet moments of the night, I questioned myself. Revenge was intoxicating, but was I losing parts of myself in the process? Could the pursuit of justice make me something unrecognizable? I wrestled with these thoughts as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, letting my mind run through possibilities, scenarios, and contingencies. Each plan had risks, each action potential consequences, yet I reminded myself that patience and precision were essential. I would not act impulsively. I would not falter. My mother's memory demanded discipline and strategy. Over the following weeks, I began testing small pieces of the plan. A rumor planted discreetly among staff, a minor discrepancy, highlighted in front of a volunteer meeting, small nudges that caused tension without exposing me. Each experiment taught me more about Vanessa's psychology, how she reacted under subtle pressure, where her defenses faltered, and how far she would go to maintain control. I documented everything carefully, knowing that when the final confrontation came, it would be built on a foundation of knowledge she could not anticipate. The work was exhausting, both mentally and emotionally. Each day, I wore a mask of calm composure while my mind churned with calculations, contingencies, and strategies. The charity became a stage, and I moved across it like an actor, playing my part, watching, waiting, and learning. I found satisfaction in the smallest victories. A flicker of doubt in Vanessa's eye, a staff member questioning her authority subtly, a whisper of discontent spreading quietly through the ranks. These were the sparks that would ignite a larger fire. I also revisited my mother's letters frequently. They were my anchor, a reminder of why I could not allow Vanessa's lies to stand. Each letter reinforced my identity, my rights, and my purpose. They reminded me that the love my mother had for me was real, unshakable, and far stronger than the venom Vanessa had attempted to inject into our family's history. I drew strength from them, using them to steel my resolve during moments of self-doubt. As the weeks passed, the tension between what I needed to do and who I was grew more defined. I was no longer just Elena, the grieving daughter. I had become a strategist, an observer, a silent force within Vanessa's carefully constructed world. And I knew, with an unshakable certainty, that the day would come when all the information, all the observations, all the careful planning would converge. On that day, Vanessa would realize that the sister she had underestimated was not just capable of revenge, she was inevitable. By the end of that month, I had a detailed dossier: timelines, vulnerabilities, observations, and strategies. Every minor flaw Vanessa displayed, every arrogance, every hidden insecurity, had been cataloged, mapped, and analyzed. I had prepared myself for the confrontation mentally, emotionally, and strategically. The fire inside me was no longer a fleeting spark. It was a roaring flame, ready to consume the carefully built facade of my sister's life. But I did not act yet. I waited, honing my patience like a sharpened blade. Every moment of observation, every whispered conversation, every seemingly mundane detail had purpose. I was preparing for the perfect execution, a reckoning that Vanessa could not escape, a revelation so precise that it would leave no room for denial. And with each passing day, my confidence grew. I was ready to reclaim not just my mother's love, but the life, dignity, and truth that Vanessa had tried to steal from me. The storm had been brewing for weeks, but the night of the confrontation, it raged both outside and inside the walls of our family home. The rain pounded against the windows like a relentless drum, mirroring the pounding of my heart. Every flash of lightning illuminated the perfectly polished surfaces Vanessa had spent years curating, each one a testament to her meticulous control. Tonight, that control would shatter, and I would be the one holding the hammer. I had prepared meticulously. Every observation, every subtle manipulation, every secret she thought buried was now a weapon in my hands. The dossier I carried was comprehensive. Financial discrepancies, hidden correspondence, manipulated relationships, and the undeniable proof of her lies about our mother. Each piece was selected to pierce her arrogance and reveal the truth she had tried to hide from the world. Vanessa greeted me with her usual polished smile, but there was a flicker in her eyes I had not seen before. Perhaps she sensed something, some quiet force gathering in the room, though she had no way of knowing how completely her life had been mapped, analyzed, and understood. I returned her smile with one of my own, calm, controlled, and entirely deliberate. The storm outside drowned any hesitation I might have felt. The room itself seemed to vibrate with tension, as if aware of the collision that was about to occur. I began slowly, speaking softly, almost conversationally, as if we were sharing an ordinary family discussion. Vanessa, do you remember when you told me I wasn't really Mom's child? I asked, letting the words hang in the air. Her smile faltered, the slight tightening around her eyes betraying the first ripple of unease. You were so sure of your truth, so certain that no one would ever see through it. I paused, letting the silence stretch, the rhythm of the storm outside accentuating every word. Her composure returned for a moment. Elena, I don't know what you're talking about, she said, voice smooth, carefully neutral. But I could see it, the slightest tremor in her hands, the subtle shift in posture. I was already inside her mind, pulling at the threads she had left vulnerable, testing the strength of the carefully constructed walls. I opened the dossier slowly, deliberately, allowing her to glimpse the edges of papers she had never expected me to find. I've been watching, Vanessa, listening, learning, and I've found the truth. The financial inconsistencies, the manipulated relationships, the lies you told about Mom, all of it. My voice was quiet, but every word struck like a hammer. Her expression hardened for a moment, defiance flickering in her eyes, but the cracks were forming. I began revealing the first pieces of evidence, small discrepancies she had overlooked, emails she had deleted but I had recovered, testimonies from people she thought loyal. Each revelation was precise, surgical, leaving no room for deniability. I watched as her confident facade started to crumble, her perfect composure giving way to something far more human. Fear, shock, and finally, a dawning recognition of the web she had woven and the trap that had closed around her. The room was tense, charged, the storm outside echoing every revelation. Vanessa's breathing quickened, her posture rigid, hands clutching the edges of a nearby chair. She tried to interrupt, to regain control, but every attempt was thwarted by the clarity and completeness of the evidence I presented. She had believed herself untouchable, but I had anticipated every possible defense, every plausible excuse, every attempt to deflect blame. I had turned her arrogance into vulnerability, her certainty into chaos. Then came the final piece, the letters from our mother. I laid them out carefully, each one a testament to the love she had given me, the moments she had cherished, the life she had hoped for me. Vanessa's eyes widened as she realized the undeniable truth. Her manipulations, her lies, her attempts to erase me from our mother's memory had failed. The proof was irrefutable, glowing with a clarity she could not argue with. Tears sprang to her eyes, though her pride made her turn her face away. Silence fell for a moment, broken only by the storm. Then Vanessa spoke, voice shaking. I didn't think you would find all of this. Her words were almost a whisper, a confession disguised as shock. I didn't answer. I let the silence speak, letting the weight of the evidence and the inevitability of her exposure settle fully. There was no need for triumph in my voice. The truth itself was the hammer, and it had landed. The consequences unfolded quickly. Those who had once admired or feared her began to distance themselves, drawn to the undeniable clarity of her exposure. Allies who had ignored, supported, or enabled her manipulation now saw the cracks she could not hide. The social and financial networks she had cultivated with such care began to shift, subtly at first, then more openly. The world she had meticulously controlled was unraveling, thread by thread, and she could do nothing to stop it. I did not gloat, though satisfaction burned brightly beneath my calm exterior. I had achieved justice, and more importantly, I had survived the betrayal. I had reclaimed my place in our family, my identity, and my dignity. Standing there, amidst the evidence and the chaos, I felt a profound sense of power. Not the cruel power Vanessa had wielded, but the quiet, steady power of truth, patience, and resolve. My mother's love had guided me, fortified me, and now it shone in the clarity of my victory. Later, as the storm began to wane and the first light of dawn seeped through the curtains, I found myself in the study, the room where I had discovered the letters and journal entries that had sparked the fire in me. I placed a hand gently on the edge of the desk, the polished wood cool beneath my fingers. I whispered to the empty room, "It's over. I've reclaimed what is mine. I've honored you, Mom." Grief lingered, soft and persistent, but it no longer weighed me down. The fire had transformed into resilience, a quiet, unshakable strength. Vanessa remained in the room, her presence diminished, no longer commanding, no longer untouchable. Her eyes met mine once, briefly, a mixture of shame, regret, and perhaps recognition. I did not offer forgiveness. There was no need. The consequences she faced were already profound, and the truth she had attempted to bury had risen like a tide, unstoppable and unrelenting. I walked past her, my steps steady, my heart clear. Outside, the rain had eased, leaving the world washed clean, the storm spent. It was a fitting reflection of what had occurred within the walls of our home: chaos, revelation, and finally, clarity. I had turned betrayal into power, grief into strategy, and cruelty into justice. And in that transformation, I found not only victory, but also peace. The final lesson was undeniable. Betrayal may cut deep, but truth and patience are sharper than any blade. Vanessa had underestimated me, as she had always underestimated the quiet, observant one, and that mistake had cost her everything. As I stepped outside, feeling the wet grass beneath my feet, I allowed myself a long, deep breath, inhaling the cool, clean air. The future was mine, shaped not by deceit or cruelty, but by resilience, strategy, and the unwavering love of a mother who had never truly left my side.